All right, we're back with another Wet Your Palate. Just going to give you a little recap on the podcast we just did. We had a special guest who is still with us right now, Amanda McCrossin. Hello, Amanda. What sort of things should people expect from this podcast?
Ooh, well, first of all, there's champagne involved, which is always my kind of podcast.
Boom.
We also dive into what it's like to hear from the trolls on social media. Always a great time. Psychology of being a Somm on the floor.
The beautiful, dirty world of being a Somm turned influencer.
And we also get some cool, nice stories, too, of the inside of Napa Valley as well. You had a good story about your dad.
Yeah.
And
some Smash or Pass on some wine stuff.
Smash or Pass.
All right, well, welcome to another Go With Your Palate episode. I've got Chris Fat Mario Rubio here and me, Joe Wagner, as co-hosts. And today we have a very special guest, somebody that I've known for many years, a very professional human being in the world of wine, a very accomplished sommelier, a influencer, might I add, I suppose. And she seems to be very well in touch with everything going on in the wine world, and also has a good head on her shoulders about how to get people back into wine or newcomers into wine. So welcome, Amanda McCrossin.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
I'm so professional. I love being addressed as professional.
Well, you have to take it from a standard level, right? So if I consider myself professional, then I think that you're very, very professional.
Okay, 2 notches above.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going the right direction.
So you ready to talk about some wine, entrepreneurship, and whatever the fuck else?
I am here to just have a good time. You ask the questions, I'll do my best to answer them, and hopefully we can drink and have some fun along the way.
Well, I'm going to ask like one of the most important questions I think probably of today. Do you notice anything new about Joe?
I didn't want to say anything, but it's a really nice bat. No, I'm just kidding. What's going on, buddy? I like this. This is like a new hairdo, huh?
Yeah. Well, I also shaved my beard, and I should just say, I got alopecia. I don't. I wish I did though. That'd be kind of cool because if I lost all the hair everywhere, then it'd be like a new man. Yeah, I just decided my 10-year-old daughter has no memory of me not having a beard, so I shaved my whole beard. And in the process, my wife cut my hair, and it turned into kind of a mohawk. So, anyways, it'll grow back.
You're so hip and cool. Look at you, just trying to identify with the next generation.
I'm trying to identify as a Gen Z, even though I'm at the top end of millennial.
See, I didn't know if it had anything to do because we talked last week, and you mentioned something about his brother being more handsome, and then all of a sudden he shaves. It does this whole new look.
Oh,
yeah, you really
that's a valid point.
You hurt my feelings.
You're a close second. Charlie, though.
You know what's funny is that
you Wagner men.
I've had bunch.
You're not short on the gene pool.
I've had a bunch of people be like, you look just like your dad. I'm like, I don't know. Is that I think it's a compliment. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah.
Oh no, it's you know what? I found there's this old bookshop around the corner from me, and I found this old book with all of these all the OGs from the 70s and 80s, and there's a picture of your dad in it. It's in black and white, and he's so handsome, and he just you're like, all right, I get just the charm, the charisma, everything just sort of exudes in that picture. But he's incredibly handsome, so I think that's a compliment.
Yeah, he's a good-looking guy. All right,
we're starting.
So I know, started off strong.
You are too, Joe.
So I think. Thanks for making this awkward, Chris. I think we should start off
here.
So. When we had our little discussion last week about what we were going to go through, we talked about wines, and I think we should get some wines in our glass because you're in Pennsylvania, and so it's noon, right?
It's noon, yeah.
Yeah. So
on a Friday, no less.
I know, on a Friday, you should be already a couple glasses in. So I think that we should unveil the wines that we chose for each other. So what we were planning to do is I would choose a wine that I think Amanda would like, and she was going to choose a wine that she thinks I would like. Because we have this dynamic of Somm winemaker, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't wait to
Well, what's interesting is for as long as I've known you, we've never really shared a glass or a bottle together. And I don't I was trying to dig through my memory, and I couldn't remember. I always remember you drinking cocktails if you came into press. So I didn't have any wine. So what I did was I went back through your episodes and I watched a few to kind of get a sense of where you're at in life. And what I found was there was this episode that you guys did on sparkling, and you talked about how you think one of the top five most ageable wines is champagne. So I felt like, Friday, it's a show. You always have to take into consideration your surroundings, who you're with. Also, the fact that I was going to be drinking it. So there was like a selfish angle to contend with. And so ultimately, I went with a 2010 champagne, vintage champagne.
Beautiful.
And I think that you actually have this bottle.
Oh.
What?
Because I'm nothing if not hospitable.
Wait, where did you send this?
I did.
My God! Now I feel like an asshole.
Boom!
How rude of me to drink this vintage champagne. So I did a little sleuthing, and then I did a little, covert operation behind the scenes. There's two bottles,
by the
so
way,
one's for you too.
She knows you well.
Jesus Christ!
You gotta drink both of those by the end of the pod.
I owe you something now. So
you owe me nothing.
Shall we crack this open and do a little pour? I cannot wait to try this. You want to tell us about it? So, Lelarge Pugeot.
Yeah. Lelarge Pugeot. So this Pugeot. Sorry, I can't speak French. So the biggest thing with this champagne is like one of these things that I think it frightens a lot of people. Like they drink it for celebrations, but then beyond that, they're like, I don't know what to do. So the thing with this champagne is like, one, it's vintage, which anytime you see a vintage on the label of a bottle of champagne, it usually means it's pretty special because they don't often get great vintages and therefore are not able to produce wines in a specific year. And then the other thing that you should notice is like on the back there, if you turn it around, there's these tiny little letters that say RM dash 296 blah 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 blah. That means it's a grower champagne. So that's recalled sentiment if you want. So that means that they grew the grapes and made the wine. So this is what we call grower champagne, which is different than like a house champagne like Dom Perignon or Moet or Roederer that, they buy their grapes. And this has been historically the case in champagne for years and years. But in the last 20, 30 years, grower champagnes have become more popular. And so you can get, I think, a little bit more value by going this route. And it's super small production. And I think you're going to like it because I had it the other night. And
this is right up my alley.
Delicious. So and I'm struggling so hard to get this open right now. I'm trying not to sweat on your podcast, but thank God I'm wearing denim.
I just got mine open. I made it sound like a nun's fart in church, is what we say, right?
Oh, good.
Oh, wow.
I'm like twisting the bottom. I can't even get this loose.
When you properly open champagne, it shouldn't be a pop like everybody thinks. It should be
like a nun's fart.
I've actually never heard a nun's fart in church, but hey.
Hey, all right. Yeah.
Isn't that the point?
This is
Exactly.
By the way, I respect the denim. I'm all about that.
Oh,
I actually did the denim on.
We're denim twins today.
I do it. I was feeling it.
Oh, nice. You're going full Canadian tuxedo.
The Canadian tuxedo, yeah. This is like Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears right here.
Oh, dude,
what?
That's actually one of the best compliments I can really take right now. At that time for them.
I love a good millennial call out.
That's
great.
Well, no, so I have not tasted this yet, but I am very excited. And to your point, I love grower champagnes, and I love vintage champagne. I love extra brut or zero dosage. This is extra brut. So this is right up my alley, and this is a wine I've never had before. So I'm very excited. Thank you for
good
for looking at this. So we got 50% Pinot Meunier, 30% Pinot Noir, 20% Chardonnay. At a dosage of 2 grams per liter. I like how they put the details on this. Just very straight up, and you know what you're getting into.
Transparency. It's a good thing. I just, what I wanted for you, Joe, is to just be cool with the Somms, which I know is an area and category that you struggle with. And so I wanted to
struggle.
Give you a cool grower champagne that when you go to your next restaurant, you're like, I have this great grower champagne. Straight under the radar. Maybe you know it.
I was actually at Charter Oak last night and talking to the Somm. And when I go back there, he's actually a nice guy. I'm gonna just try to botch the name. Just be like Lelarge Pugeot.
Love it.
No, as I say, as a Somm, you hear people botch names all the time. Do you ever correct, or do you just say like, I'm letting it ride? Because I mean, even with
Absolutely not.
never correct.
I would never correct someone. I would never correct someone on anything in a hospitality situation, unless they asked me, like, am I saying that correctly? Then I would interject.
Yeah,
I would pronounce the name correctly or as I think is correct, like when I presented the bottle, and then, maybe that's their subtle cue to pronounce it differently next time. But the other thing is, like, as you have learned on the internet, there's the pronunciation police are everywhere, and they're the first ones to come after you in the comments for pronouncing something wrong. Like there was a whole TikTok issue where I was pronouncing Sauvignon Blanc with the C because that's how we pronounce it here in the US. We pronounce that C at the end of Blanc. And there was this one American who, she's a citizen of the world. She speaks all the languages, and she was in my comments. And then she made a video about how I'm incorrectly pronouncing things. I'm like, I'm just here to drink wine. Like, what are we doing here? Who's got the time?
and that I think that's a great way to look at it. And I don't correct people, and even with the brand names, right? So Belle Gloss, my grandmother's maiden name, I hear Bella Glow all the time, and it's just like you call it whatever you want. That's totally fine. But then I also find myself feeling a little pompous when I actually tried to pronounce things the proper way. Like take another champagne house, Tatange. So if I order that from a server at a restaurant, oftentimes they'll be like, "What are you talking about?" And then you're like, "The Tattanger," and then I feel a little pompous. So it's kind of it's a bit of a double-edged sword there.
It is, and I don't think it's not something that we can win. Like, I don't think there's any winning. So just say and that's the other thing is, like, just say it how you're going to say it. Like, don't ever be nervous about pronouncing something, because I think most of us don't get it right 100% of the time. But who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
Get it on my glass. Put it on my check and get it on my glass.
So this champagne is wonderful, though. It's got a little bit of that honeysuckle coming through. It's just barely oxidized, where it's got this creaminess, but beautiful, vibrant acidity. I hope I'm making people's mouths water out there.
It's got that like nuttiness and like that almond frangipane thing. I had this with like caviar, and it was actually a little too rich for caviar. But when I brought it with like fried potatoes, that's where it really started to shine.
Potatoes,
but
and
I love the champagne, and I will say, and not to be gauche, I will say the champagne, for a vintage champagne and something that's actually been aged on a lees for as long as it has, it's like $75-$80.
That's all?
Yeah.
So
wow.
Yeah, so it's like pretty reasonable and for that category of wine, because as you know, like with vintage champagnes, and especially with like smaller producers that are operating in this way, like it can be more expensive. Grower champagnes, as I mentioned, are sometimes less expensive than like your Crus, your Doms, like your bigger houses, but I still think this is an incredible value. Like, I'm not drinking it every night, but
it's great, and that's a good point. I mean, the brand names, it really is interesting to see how this next generation is really driven towards branding and brand names more than they are about the story of the product. And I hope that evolves into, whether it's millennials or Gen Z that are coming in, that they start to learn more about it and understand, rather than just say like, well, I saw Veuve Clicquot in this video and that's my go-to champagne. Because to your point, you can find great champagnes at a much lower price. And like Gonnet Medeville is one that I found that I absolutely love. Very traditional, and they're phenomenal, and they far outweigh the main brands that are coming out of Champagne at a more reasonable price. So
I think so too. And I think the key with like the younger generation is like they want to see these wines enjoyed by people that they look up to or aspire to be, and they want to see them in settings that they could maybe visualize themselves in. But the other thing is like they do want that transparency, and if they want to dive deeper to figure out a little bit more on the brand, like they want the information to be there. So it's sort of this like hybrid that I don't think that the wine community has fully figured out yet, because like think about most of your Napa Valley brands, for example, like they're just really leaning into like the terroir and like who made the wine, and like Louis Vuitton is not talking about where they're getting the leather for their bags, right? Like
yeah. All right, so I brought a wine out of the cellar, not as much age as maybe I would have liked to have tried this at, but my wine for you that I picked was a 2018 DDA Dagenau Silex.
Ooh.
So,
Oh, Oh, fancy.
So you seem to strike me as a woman who likes their very traditional style whites, more lean and clean and bright, and your reds more overt and new world. Is that safe to say? I mean, I know you like everything. You appreciate everything.
Okay, before I answer, I'm so curious. Or before I answer, I'm so curious why you think that. Is there like videos or like is that just my personality?
It's the
No,
denim.
I. it was, no, it was. I think it's just over the years and talking to you, even like when you were at press, which is I think the
Yeah.
first time that we met, and just kind of like picking up cues, and for whatever reason that kind of stuck in my mind, as I guess maybe it's purely a judgment call from me to you. I,
Yeah. No, I only ask because it's kind of true. I actually really like rich whites, which interestingly, like that Dagenau Silex for as bright and as minerally as it is, it's actually a pretty rich Sauvignon Blanc because of how it's made. So it kind of like to me it like dabbles between a little bit of everything. Like if you don't love the zigzaggy nature that Sauvignon Blanc tends to have, like the Selects is kind of like that's a great one for you. Any of Dagenau's wines are kind of a great one to try if you can find it and if you have the money. But for reds, I'm kind of all. It really depends on what I'm eating. Like last night, I had a really beautiful bottle of Pinot Noir from Oregon, not yours. Sorry, it was Zena Crown, and I love that wine. But like I also love, really lean, crunchy, like Rosso di Montalcino from Stella di Campotto in Tuscany, which is a very like old school style producer. But at the same time, like I'll drink a rich Cabernet from Napa Valley. I just don't want to. I don't do it every night. So it really depends on like
yeah.
kind of where I'm at. But my palate does lean a little bit to the light side. I think because I just get tired of, palate fatigue and drinking heavy.
I think I'm with you on that. I just I agree 100%. And it's funny. I rarely go to a restaurant and order Cabernet. That seems to be
Yeah.
like I almost just totally don't even look, and I shouldn't be saying that because like we make Cabernet. My family's been making Cabernet. Cabernet is king here in Napa Valley, and Cabernet is still king for reds in America. But oftentimes I want to see something or try something that's more unique and special, and that really does convey a sense of place. And so I take more of a risk on like a Zinfandel that comes from a vineyard that I know of in Paso Robles or something of that sort. And that's always it just makes it more fun, and generally speaking, it I think it elevates the experience, and that's really what wine should do every day anyways. Something to
Yeah, I
talk
agree.
about rather than just go with your there's a time and place for your standards, for your go-to known quantities, and then there's a lot of other times where it's like explore, have some fun.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting that we both chose European wines for each other.
I was actually you were talking about enjoying bigger some of the richer whites. I almost brought a white Rhone.
Ooh, I do like a northern, like a Condrieu.
Yes, I think yeah. So I was like I
Yeah.
think that this is something she would probably like. And anyways, I went straight to this, and I'm really on a Sauv Blanc kick right now. So and these are inspirational wines. When I say
Totally.
on a Sauv Blanc kick, we're doing a lot of experimentation with Sauv Blanc in the cellar. So we got some really good stuff going, but really love the style of what they're doing. In the Loire and in Sancerre, and that's really kind of what is motivating us right now to do some great Napa Valley Sauv Blancs.
Yeah. I bet Sauv Blanc has never been a grape that I have naturally gravitated toward. I actually didn't really start enjoying it until I got to Napa and I started drinking some of the producers. Because as you know, like, a lot of the Sauvignon Blancs out there, they're made to be, the cash makers of like they're not easy to make, but they generally come out early. They don't require as much aging. And so for that reason, I think that you find a lot of really inexpensive and poorly made Sauvignon Blanc on the shelves. And so it's made me not love it. But the ones that are taking care of Sauvignon Blanc and making it to the highest quality that it can be made, I think those are extraordinary wines. And I get excited about those kinds of Sauvignon Blancs. Dagenau, of course, being like the benchmark example of that in the Loire Valley. But
Yeah.
I have this theory about Sauvignon Blanc, and I'm curious if you guys have experienced this, but as it's not, this is not like fully fleshed out, purely anecdotal, but I have this theory around Sauvignon Blanc. that women tend to order Sauvignon Blanc over Chardonnay because they associate it with like healthier fruits and they think that it's
Hmm.
therefore a healthier choice. So if you look at like the tasting notes of like Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay, for example, like Sauvignon Blanc generally leans like lemon, lime, grapefruit, like flavors that we would associate with like
Oh.
the healthier choices. Whereas like Chardonnay leans towards apples, butter, pie. And even though, like, as you know, none of those things are in the glass, I often wonder if like women traditionally gravitate towards Sauvignon Blanc because of that reason. Like I said, completely like
I
unsubstantiated,
I
but
think you could write a book on the psychology of tasting notes. I think that you should
mm,
probably consider that because I think you're right. While what you're saying is extremely sexist, and I'm offended on behalf of all of the women out there. But no, I think you have a point. I've
oh
never.
gosh, am I gonna get
Yeah, you're
am I
getting
gonna get
canceled,
canceled for
Amanda.
that?
Oh God, no. I think you have a great point though. I've never thought of that.
I
That's
haven't
such a
either. That's
cool
actually really
perspective.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's
And it's
tasting
not
notes
all
as
women. It's
marketing.
just like there is a particular like subset of
Oh,
women
I
I
know. Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that order it, and I can almost like feel them like a dry because I think what it is like they say I want a dry Sauvignon Blanc, right? Meaning they want this like very dry, lean, almost like invokes this idea of like a healthier option. And so that's kind of what I mean about like the Sauvignon Blanc versus Chardonnay. But as you know, like in reality, like they're generally the same calorically. Like they don't,
Exactly. Yeah, they're the same
you know,
level of
Yeah.
health. You know, one doesn't trump the other as far as being
yeah.
better for you.
Yeah.
So, but I actually think you're totally onto something with that. And you might be driving me to adjust some of the nomenclature I use in my tasting notes.
Okay.
It's like Los Alturas doesn't taste like berry pie filling anymore. Now it's
Yeah.
Now it's like I don't know. Would you top with like what's like very healthy right now, like tart cherry juice or something,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It'll make you like go to sleep.
I'll have to send you our tasting
Yeah.
notes for the spirits because I had a little bit of fun. It was like
Yeah.
we talked about like smell like antique oak furniture in a fire.
See, that's what I
so-
was. Yeah, and I feel like those kind of tasting notes, like growing up here, or sitting around the table, or like listening to some things that your dad would say back in the day, or even that you will say now. Saying like you can get on the nose gun smoke.
yeah.
Touching like these different things, like you were just saying, antique furniture, stuff like that. Outside of it, kind of getting outside of the normal what you see.
I think people understand
read.
that too, and they sometimes it can be a little cheeky, but I think that it really does. If it's a true descriptor, I think it makes it that much more interesting, and getting people to correlate like the power of suggestion is so real when you're learning about wine that you need somebody. That's where I think Somms do come in very helpful, where it's like you can be tableside and be able to say, somebody's holding that glass up to their nose and they're tasting it and they're like, wow, a lot of stuff is familiar in this, but I can't grasp what it is. And then the power of suggestion, they're like, I mean, it could be bubble gum, it could be pineapple, it could be whatever. And they're like, oh, ding, got it. And that exercise over and over again is what allows you to be able to, nobody just comes out of the gate and can describe what they're tasting.
Yeah.
It takes time, training, and a lot of drinking. Such an
Yes.
excuse.
Yeah, it's like, it's the word association between your senses, right? Which we're taught to do as kids with like sight and sound, but we're not really taught to do with like scent and taste. So in the same way that you are taught to look at a bird and say bird, or hear a cow moo and say cow, like we're not taught to do that with flavors, right? Nobody's giving you a cherry and saying like, tell me what this tastes like.
Yeah.
So it does require that sort of level of skill to be developed.
So we kind of jumped right in, which
Yeah.
is fun, but I want to back up just
Yeah.
a couple steps here. This is what I love about the podcast is like we can go wherever, and
We do.
and we do. But let's back up a little bit because I've known you since maybe circa 2012, 14, somewhere in there. But
Yeah,
you,
I moved to Napa in 15, so that'd be about right.
It's 15? Okay. So why don't you give us a little bit of history in kind of how you came to be, because you're one of the, at least as far as I know, one of the few Somms that really, in my opinion, gets it and understands that you bring people together rather than really pull people apart in the wine world. And I appreciate that greatly because of my combative relationships that I've had with Somms in the past. But that's one thing I feel is really missing. But in our world, right, we're kind of infighting to a degree that is really affecting, I think, the future of wine. So you've harnessed a very different approach. But let's start with how you got interested in this, how you got to where you're at, and what you see as your future.
Yeah, okay. That's a lot to unpack, but I will do my best. I've got wine, we've got time. Well, I think the first thing is like I didn't come from a wine drinking family. Like it's well documented at this point that like the things that we had in our closet and like in our closet, literally like the closet where we kept our ski stuff was where we kept the wine. And I'll never forget like the first time we went out to, not the first time, but we went out to a fancy dinner, and the first time we ordered wine, we ordered a bottle of Conundrum. And we felt very fancy, and it was like a family thing. And I remember like looking around the table and like it kind of like elevated the whole experience. Anyway, flash forward to when I was living in New York City. My background is in musical theater, film, and TV. And so I have my degree in musical theater. I worked professionally as an actress for years. And so when I went to New York, I had this side job at a private club called the Core Club. And I got very interested in wine there via another sommelier who had worked at 3 Michelin-starred restaurants and was very gracious in helping me to learn and sort of mentoring me through the process. But the whole time, like I felt very much like an outsider. Like even while he was mentoring me through this, I didn't come from this like pedigreed household with wine cellars. Like I didn't know anything about wine. I didn't even know that like Chablis wasn't a grape. Like it's not, it's a place. And like this, I even trying to establish the fact that like some wines are labeled by region and some wines are labeled by grape. Like that is where I was starting from. And so that feeling always stuck with me. And I think having this background in film and TV and theater, I wanted to kind of take everything full circle because I didn't also see a lot of people that looked like me in the business. And I felt like I wanted there to be someone that I could learn from that I sort of identified with. And so when I was living in New York, I started working as a somm, and then I started this YouTube channel. And it was just this like little thing that I did. It wasn't a big thing. But when I moved to Napa, things really changed. And I moved to Napa because I wanted to work at this restaurant called Press. And at the time, they had the largest, deepest collection of Napa Valley wines in the world. And it was an extraordinary opportunity. So I basically packed my things up. I moved out within 3 weeks and knew no one. I moved across the country. I had no family there, no friends. And I started this job. And that's kind of what changed the trajectory of my learning and how I would talk about wine. Because when you're living in New York, I think as a somm, you are really kind of, you're only given what's there, right? So you're given the opinions and the feelings of the other sommeliers, the other professionals, and then a handful of producers who are coming there to visit. And that's sort of the framework with which you have, to learn from. When I got to Napa and I started, walking the vineyards and talking to winemakers and getting lots of different perspectives, it was the first time that I felt like I could start to form my own identity as a wine person and start to form my own thoughts around wine. And so that was really formative for me in like the trajectory, not only of my learning, but also my career, because I also found myself needing to have a Rolodex of vineyards to recommend to people at the restaurant. And so that's really where the YouTube channel started taking off. I decided to go to, it was crazy. For an entire month, I filmed a different vineyard every single day. The whole experience. I would come home, I would edit the video, I'd go to work, I'd finish the edit, upload the video, and then I did it all over. And I did it for an entire month. And it was about the time that like Casey Neistat, if you're familiar with him, he was starting to get popular. And I was like, well, surely if Casey can do it, I can. Not knowing, of course, that like Casey has this like long history of making incredible videos, and like having worked with HBO. And anyway, that was sort of my inspiration to do all of this. And so I was working at Press as a somm, worked there for 3 years as a somm, and then took over as wine director. And then in February of 2020, I decided to take my social media and speaking career full time, which was aptly timed in February 2020.
I know. I remember seeing you shortly after the pandemic started, and I was like, do you have a crystal ball?
No. No, that was like a terrifying moment in my life for so many reasons.
Well, I got to say that your time at Press, the wine list it still is very strong, but the wine list being very focused on Napa Valley, it was very, very much a provincial sort of wine list. and gave you access, it seemed, to direct access to vintners, right? And you could go and be able to pull deep into their cellars, back vintages, and I mean, I had I think a 1974 Petite Syrah from God, I think that was Ridge actually.
York, I was gonna say Ridge, York Creek Vineyard.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember that distinctly, and just where can you get those experiences? And there's not a lot of restaurants that are really focusing on that. I mean, we're seeing wine lists really being consolidated down to the comfort products that people know, because restaurants are in a way kind of destocking, just as you're seeing in retail, just as we're seeing at the retail level or at the distributor level, where everybody's trying to thin things out as much as they can, partly due to the economy,
right.
the whatever the interest rates and all that, but just going with what works right now until things settle out. And it really does affect the small producers. That's the sad part about it, where these people are they're passion projects, but they want to get these wines out there, and they're not able to as broadly as they were 5 years ago, because there's just such a pullback from a risk management standpoint, I think, from a lot of these, restaurants in particular. And so, what are the avenues to get people into these wines, to explore and experiment beyond, you could say a lot of our wines are mainstream, but I want people to be able to, maybe find their way into the wine world through a more mainstream wine, and then get deeper and deeper and deeper. So, what you're doing right now really does facilitate that. How are you able to reach out to those people, regardless of generation? How do you feel like you're able to get them to get outside of the box?
Well, I think you said something that is so true, which is the avenue to wine is generally not through the small producer for most people, right? We, as Somms, I think there's the inclination to pass judgment on producers that are bigger, right? We all know who they are.
You don't say.
No.
we could say them for people that don't know.
Yeah, but okay, no, and I don't here. But here's the thing, and I'm not saying it not, and I think this is not a bad thing, right? And this is what we would maybe call the Starbucks effect. We need the Starbucks of the wine world to exist in order for the third wave to come through, right? Third wave coffee culture doesn't happen without Starbucks. So in order for people to get on board with wine, there has to be a pathway, and we have to respect that pathway as Somms. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges we face in the industry, is looking at wine from all angles and seeing the benefit of every single wine that's out there, and not just championing the merits of the small producer. We love the small producer. We want people to drink boutique wines and things they've never heard of, because ultimately those are the avenues that keep us intrigued and keep us interested. But we also have to be respectful of the fact that most people are going to be going to Total Wine or to Rayleigh's or to any of their big box stores, and they're probably going to be getting something more mainstream, a la Caymus or Quilt or Silver Oak, or something that they can find easily, and that's something that feels comfortable to them before they start branching out into other producers. And so I think that's been part of how I've been able to be successful, is one, I don't have this wine background. And so this feeling of insecurity deeply, deeply resonates with me, and it still stays with me. And then I think also, trying to have an open mind about all producers and seeing the merits of everyone who's making wine, and not passing judgment on people for drinking them. I think you hear it all the time, right? Especially as Somms, they're like, oh, well, I only drank this. I'm like, okay, great. That's awesome. I'm glad that you're drinking wine. We can take you from that wine to another wine easier than I can take you from a vodka soda. So the fact that you're even drinking wine means that you're at the table. Let's just open up the conversation a little deeper. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a big part of it. And living in Napa, when people ask me about, what's the best way to learn about wine, or what's the best way to get into wine, if you can move to a wine region, if you have that ability in your life, do it. It will change how you see wine. It will change how you drink wine. It will change how you talk about wine. Just being immersed in that culture makes it so different. And you guys are so lucky that you grew up there, so you maybe don't know any different, but the world does not live in Napa Valley. They live outside of there, where things are very different, and we're not inundated with information that helps us to make informed decisions every single day when we're out shopping for wine.
That's a good point. And I mean, I'd like to go back to that Starbucks effect point you had too, because that is so true. And that's something that I want to focus on, and I can give an example of this in a moment. But rather than this divisive character that we see in the wine world, whether it's from small producer to large producer, to from some criticisms of stylistic preferences, from non-intervention to full intervention, whatever it is, that we're really dividing the industry. We're due to infighting, and I think that's due to just personal ideologies that don't necessarily line up with the general consumer out there, and so we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So how do we get these people from every element of the industry, all three tiers, so Somms, distributors, producers, whatever it is, at all different levels, all together working in kind of lockstep to be able to progress the industry. And so, it's really does come down to having an open mind, and I think just continuing to state that over and over. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Angry Somm.
Yes.
Here we go.
So so many people just put their head in the sand, right? And I'm not saying that he's putting his head in the sand, but I'm saying as a producer, this guy has said some really ruthless things about me, about my family, about our wines, and whatever else. I'm like, it's cool. Okay, you got your own preference. Instead, put the olive branch out there, and we're right now trying to get him to come out to actually participate in winemaking with us and see what we do, why we do it, give him an appreciation for, well, he may not like our style of wine. That's fine. Yeah. I just want him to understand that what we're doing is real. And
yes.
it does, it does satisfy my personal preferences of how we make our wines, because I like drinking the style of wines we make. But I make wines that I don't like drinking too. I know that there's a place out there for that gigantic Butterbomb oaky Chardonnay. And that's something that, like, it's a very rare day that I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to open that. But I know that there are people out there, and if that's where you're going to start in our portfolio, and then we can open up, like you said, get them at the table, and they're already drinking wine. Now it's let's explore beyond what your comfort zone is, and everybody's intrigued. Everybody wants to learn more, and so it's a matter of continuing to just evolve everybody's palate.
Yeah, it's fascinating going to some of these like bigger, and I love that you're inviting him out to see what, just like see how the sausage is made, right? Like pull back the curtain, show how it's done. Like there's actual people who are there making the wine. It's not like it's not like a whole bunch of robots. But I think one of the most fascinating things I've ever done is going to like the facilities at Jackson Family Wines, where they make the Kendall Jackson Vintners Reserve, to see how that's made, because like you see the benefit of economies of scale there, right? Like you see how there can actually be a lot of pros in the larger scale production. And I think to make fun of those who are drinking those wines, I think, as you said, makes us all more divisive. And I don't think it helps anyone. Now, granted, like, do I think my mom is following the Angry Somm? No. I think Somms are, and I think they find it funny. But also, there's a level of like, I don't think people realize what they're saying when they say it. I generally don't think that they're completely informed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, growing up here, and I've always said this multiple times too, I didn't realize the pretentiousness of the wine world until I actually moved out of here. So it was like 18, and then living in cities like New York and LA and stuff. So growing up here and being, and now I really find gratitude for being immersed in this culture and with the families, and kind of seeing how it's made, not only how the sausage is made, but that these have roots. I mean, they have family roots, and to have people kind of, and this, I get a little pumped up with the Angry Somm, because it's like people are just kind of running on their mouth saying stuff because to me, it's assumption. They're assuming. And I hope he does take the invitation to actually come up here, because that's what I like about now. Joe is now, obviously, I mean, I think we can say he's an influencer. I don't know. I was going to ask you, Amanda, if you actually certify him, because I see you're the only one that can really
certify you as an influencer.
Yeah, dude. Welcome. Yeah.
Do I do the cross or something? Is that
because you're definitely renowned in that industry. So I know Joe's really happy about that. But I digress. I think it's always opening the door to those people that are kind of, we would call the haters or the trolls, that actually really come up. Let's have a discussion. Let's like learn from each other, and and actually make it educational and fun rather than just kind of, I'm going to do some shit talking.
Yeah, well, but there's
and
also
nothing comes of it.
From a producer standpoint, like, so, I do feel like we are attacked at times, right? And that's usually from the most extreme different ideology. So non-intervention or low intervention winemakers love to talk shit about our winemaking. And so, so I could just be like, let it go. But then I also feel like there is a need to educate the consumer on what that means to me. And so then, then you just perpetuate the infighting, right? That's the issue, right? So
Right.
I will stand up for what our ideas are, and sometimes that does come at the cost of a comparative analysis to whatever the anti charge is, so to speak. So, like, well, I'll say, well,
Don't you feel like the people have spoken? Like the consumers have spoken. Like let's look at the numbers. Like they've told us what they like. Like there's a reason these wines are popular, right? And it's
That's
not because
true.
of Somms. It's because they've decided over and over again that this is what they choose.
That's true. And what I would love to do is like the guys from Hedges, right, up in Washington. Are you familiar with them?
Oh yeah, I love Hedges.
So so they dropped into a seminar I was doing once, and they just stood in the back. And this is I wanted, like, I was thinking, I was like, whenever I do a seminar, I want to like stage guys like this in the crowd. Like, it turned into an awesome conversation. But we got to the Q&A piece of the seminar, and I had been going through kind of like the different regions for Pinot Noir throughout California. And they were like, "What do you think about non-intervention winemaking?" and so I was like, "Oh, okay." That's I was like, "Well, I think once you plant a grape or you plant a vine, you're intervening. You put trellising in. If you're doing any cultural practices, I mean, if you're true non-intervention, you're just going out in the woods and trying to find rotten grapes that you can squeeze and get wine in a glass. Like that's it.
Right.
We're
That's
intervening
true
in,
non-intervention.
yeah, we're intervening in every step of the process to, in my opinion, maximize what Mother Nature gave us to capture that sense of time and place in a bottle. Right. That's kind of what just winemaking at its core is about. And there are different styles, and yes, the consumers have spoken as to what styles they prefer. But overall, that whole conversation, and then they got a little combative in the back, and then I got a little more combative with them. And then I saw him in the bar, like afterwards at this place out in, God, we were in like Wisconsin, I think. And and I go up to him, I was like, "You guys just walked in and like you drop a bomb like that and you walk out before I can even talk to you." And it's like, where are you from? And they're like, "Oh, we're from Hedges." And we ended up having like an hour-long conversation, and left with mutual respect, which is great. And I was like, that's the kind of stuff we need. And then we had planned on doing this swap, and I think the pandemic happened. I was going to send them a ton of Napa Cab. They were going to send me a ton of Walla Walla Cab, and we were going to do our best at making it in our own styles. And I should call them back. And so that
You should.
that fell through. But
I think they're the only like biogenomically farmed vineyard in all of Washington, if I'm not mistaken.
really,
Yeah, there's like very few biodynamically farmed vineyards, weirdly. There's more coming online, but I might be mistaken on that, but I'm fairly certain it was Hedges because they also have this sister brand. I think I'm getting this right, called Magdalena,
okay,
where it's like very small and she's doing like certain carbonic stuff. I'm pretty sure that those are the two that are affiliated, but Washington's an interesting spot. But like this to me is such a perfect example of like the divisiveness of the industry and just wanting to shit on everything that they can that's not theirs instead of just being like, hey, we can all party together. Like you make something, I make something. They're not the same, but like they live in the same shelves sometimes, and that's okay. And like this idea that we all have to like something and nothing else, I think is incredibly problematic. Like I am large, I contain multitudes. I drink lots of things. I drink everything from champagne to like super ostentatious Napa Cabs. And like I love a rich, oaky, buttery Chardonnay. Like that's delicious to me. Do I want to drink it every day? Absolutely not.
yeah.
But I don't want to drink champagne every day either. I mean, that's maybe a lie, but mostly.
It's funny. I'm kind of drawing a correlation to people who do have a singular idea that they and then they chastise everything else, and the correlation there to being non-monogamous versus the people that have more of an open mind but are monogamous in their relationships? I could give examples, but I don't want to throw anybody under the bus.
Find out next week. Same time, same channel.